Such a disgusting monster. Why is it our child? We three are moving, so you can just leave on your own. With this, I finally don't have to see your ugly face. Well, take care of yourself. I can still vividly remember the scene of my parents walking away with my sister's hand after these parting words. I was abandoned by my parents. I was born with a skin disease, and because of its appearance, I have never once received kind words from my parents. Therefore, I felt neither sadness nor any special emotions towards parting with my parents, and I didn't even shed tears. I just stood there, stunned. However, my life didn't end there. The warm hand of my grandmother reached out to me. I desperately grabbed that hand. 13 years later, I met my parents again. The shock on my parents' faces when they saw me, and my astonishment at seeing them. The drastically changed appearances of both parties over the 13 years determined the light and shadow of our respective lives and hinted at what was to come. My name is Julie. I lived with my father, who works at a trading company, my mother, a homemaker, and my sister Sally, who is 2 years younger than me. I was born with sensitive skin and suffer from severe atopic dermatitis. Dryness and sunlight, among other things, cause inflammation all over my body, accompanied by terrible itching. Unable to bear this uncomfortable itching, scratching inadvertently causes the inflammation to spread, and my skin to flare up red, a repeating cycle. If I had received proper treatment as a child, it wouldn't have gotten this bad. However, my parents never once took me to the hospital. Instead, they only ever hurled insults at me, calling me ugly, dirty, and disgusting. To top it off, they said, "We should never have had you, and having a monster like you around makes me sick. Get out of my room." Because of the disease I was born with, I have never once received love from my parents. Contrary to me, my parents lavished love on my sister Sally. Sally was born with very beautiful skin, her facial features were doll-like, and she had a blessed appearance that every woman envied. Sally, who was showered with love by my parents, grew up healthy. She started treating me coldly too, and the disparity between us sisters in our home widened. All I could do was endure. To avoid the strong sunlight and the stares of those around me, I refrained from going out as much as possible, and being disliked by my family for wandering around the house, I often secluded myself in my room. I spent my days facing my desk, naturally opening my textbooks, and dedicating myself to my studies. With such a terrible face, I'm surprised you can even go to school. It's embarrassing for me. Well, studying is all you're good for anyway. In the summer of my junior year of high school, my sister, who was a freshman at the time, looked at my report card and smirked coldly. The first semester had ended, and we were about to start vacation the next day. Despite my being top of my class, my parents didn't say a word to me, not to mention they were completely indifferent to my grade. Sally's grades weren't exactly something to brag about, but my parents looked at her report card and smiled contentedly. A girl doesn't need to study so hard. Plus, Sally is so cute. No man could ignore her. It'd be best for her to find a nice, wealthy man and get married. My father said with a smile. That's right. And Sally is going to become a popular star, so she doesn't have time for studies. I'm gonna be her manager. We're going to be busy. My mother said, seriously considering Sally's debut in the entertainment industry. Imagining a future yet to be seen, my parents were elated. Next to parents who doted on Sally, I was like air. While many students were excited for the summer, only I started feeling gloomy. Tomorrow, I will be confined to my room for the entire vacation. Yet, there was one person I could open my heart to. That person was my grandmother, who lived nearby. After my grandfather passed away, my grandmother lived alone, and I had many opportunities to interact with her. She knew our personalities well. Sally, who was pampered by our parents due to her blessed appearance and had no difficulties growing up. And me, who couldn't go outside to avoid people's eyes and found my own path within a restricted environment, taking steady steps forward. My grandmother, while outwardly showing equal love to both of us sisters, secretly favored me, who was thoughtful and dedicated to my studies, much more than Sally. Ashamed to be seen with ugly me, my parents always left me with my grandmother when the family went out, so I spent a lot of time with just the two of us. Those peaceful moments with my kind grandmother were a priceless time of relief from all tension for me. My grandmother, now living a peaceful and carefree life, used to run the local famous general hospital taken over from my late grandfather, a well-known hospital administrator, and worked tirelessly from morning till night as a manager until a few years ago. However, after turning 70, considering her own physical limits and the future of the hospital management, she handed over her position to her eldest son, my uncle. This skin will definitely be better, so don't worry. Julie, you're a smart girl, so become whatever you want to be in the future. My grandmother was always on my side. Even though I knew it was encouragement, I was very happy to hear her words. 3 years passed, my life was still a cycle of going back and forth between home and school, and spending my days studying in my room. One day, the house felt busier than usual, so I quietly opened my room door. My parents and Sally were packing clothes and daily necessities into a large suitcase. Maybe they were going on a trip. But seeing the piles of cardboard boxes in the hallway, it didn't seem like a trip for just a few days. What were they planning? I decided to ask boldly. "What are you doing?" Hearing my voice, my father stopped what he was doing and walked over to me. "Oh, you were there? I didn't notice at all, you're so inconspicuous." "Well, I might as well tell you. The 3 of us are moving. You can just leave by yourself." I was struck with an unprecedented shock by my father's words, uttered with a click of his tongue. Moving with the 3 of them? Then, my father continued unilaterally. His company was actively expanding overseas, and this time, they decided to set up a new branch in Asia. For this reason, my father was assigned to hire and train local staff, and his transfer overseas was decided. My mother, initially hesitant about going overseas, thought it would be perfect for Sally, who aims to be a pop star in the future, to gain experience living abroad, so they decided to move as a family. Such a foolish reason for choosing to live abroad. Sally seemed excited, too. "It's too bad you can't come with us." "Well, with such an ugly face, it's impossible to bring shame on us." Sally, with a malicious smile, loudly blamed me. Then, following her statement, my father continued, "Exactly. There's no way we can take a monster like you with us. Do you know how much we've suffered because of you?" I had always thought that real parents would love their child no matter how ugly or monstrous they were, and would protect them with all their might against any hardship or criticism from society. But such ideals were just fairy tales, and this was the harsh reality. "What's with that face? It's red and inflamed, looking like a burn. I can't believe this is human. Such a disgusting monster, why is it our child?" My father, with a distorted face as if looking at something filthy, then added, "It's creepy just being near you. Get back in your room," as if shooing away a dog, and turned his back on me. Silently, I faced verbal assaults from my mother. "The time has finally come when I can live away from you. Just thinking that I won't have to see your ugly face makes me feel relieved. Besides, you're just in the way of Sally's future success. Imagine if people found out that her sister is a monster. Just the thought of it makes my skin crawl. Why was I even born into this world? Being born unwanted, I was easily discarded by my parents, and now I wonder how I will live from here on." My mind went blank. "We're leaving this weekend, so you should go to your grandmother's house. She's probably the only one willing to talk about someone as ugly as you. Besides, living abroad is expensive, and we can't afford to pay child support, but she agreed to take care of you without hesitation. She's annoying and I don't like her, but well, she has her good points." My mother said, bursting into loud laughter. "We decided to put the house up for sale. It's no longer a place for us to return to. After coming back to the States, we plan to live in an area with more agencies, aiming for Sally's debut. Well, you do your best to take care of yourself." A few days later, my parents and Sally really left the house. I was left behind, watching the backs of the 3 of them as they left. I was abandoned by my parents. I felt neither sadness nor any special emotions, and I couldn't even cry. Standing alone at the entrance, I was frozen. Then, I heard my grandmother's voice, "Sorry I'm late, I've come to pick you up. Have you packed your bags?" Her kind voice untied the tight knots of tension inside me, suddenly filling me with a sense of security, and tears flooded my vision, leading me to start crying loudly. This might have been the first time I've cried so hard in my life. My grandmother wrapped me in warmth. "It's okay now. Julie, you're free. From now on, you should do what you want to do. You deserve to be happy." Holding my grandmother's hand, I left the house. We walked down a street lined with trees. Looking up, the countless falling petals seemed to guide us towards a hopeful future. This is not the end. It's just the beginning of my new life. After being taken in by my grandmother, I studied harder than ever before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I spent all my time studying, except for the moments I shared with her. Seeing this, my grandmother spoke up. "Julie, you don't have to hold back. Tell me the truth. You have a goal, don't you?" Her words took me by surprise. "I've always said that, haven't I? You deserve to be happy. Become the person you want to be. I'll support you in any way I can." It seemed like my grandmother could see through my feelings. I have always dreamed of becoming a doctor. The stories of medicine I heard from my uncle and grandmother, and the more I knew about my grandparents' achievements, the stronger my dream became. However, aiming for medical school is a huge financial burden, and being realistic, I lacked the confidence and certainty that I, even with all my studying, could pursue a career in medicine. Being abandoned by my parents, I thought I should choose to work right after school to help my grandmother in any way I could. I was about to give up on my dream. That's when my grandmother came to me. "Grandma, thank you, but it's too big of a dream for me." Then she said, "What are you talking about? You want to be a doctor, don't you? Julie, it's going to be okay. If you study hard, you can become a doctor. I'm telling you, there's no mistake. Believe in yourself and move forward. Don't worry about the money." My grandmother had noticed my dream. "I'm so happy just knowing that you want to become a doctor. You are my hope." My grandmother smiled gently at me. We encouraged and supported each other. This is what family is, and this must be happiness. "Grandma, thank you, really, I'll do my best." For the first time in my life, I cried tears of joy. "Julie, you've really been patient. You've been through a lot of hard times. But now, you don't need to worry about what other people think or hold back anymore. We're family. Forget about your old family. Those people who find pleasure in feeling superior without making any effort and stepping on others will just end up miserable in their new place. Well, as long as they don't ruin their lives by making bad decisions." My grandmother saw everything. She knew how my parents treated me. "Those two will definitely regret it in the future," she said with a quiet smile. Thus, with the promise of my grandmother to support my education, I dedicated myself more to my studies than ever before, aiming to become a doctor like my grandparents and pursue my studies in medical school. 10 years later, my efforts paid off, and I am currently busy working as a doctor. After studying hard and aspiring to be a doctor, I graduated from university straight and passed the exam. After a rigorous internship period, I am now working as a dermatologist at a general hospital. Working at a general hospital means seeing a variety of patients. There are many severe cases, especially among women and children, who are very delicate. I make it a point to face each patient individually, providing care that ensures they feel reassured both externally and internally. I work at the general hospital where my uncle is the hospital director. My uncle, recognizing my diligent attitude, academic achievements, and thoughts on medicine, approached me as soon as my training was over. Lately, I've had many opportunities to learn a great deal about hospital management from him. My childless uncle and his wife seem to be thinking of entrusting the future of this hospital to me. Still, that's a matter for many years down the line. To repay my uncle, who has supported me since my student days, all I can do now is to continue improving every day as a doctor. It seems that the couple has returned to the States. According to neighborhood gossip, it appears my sister Sally had appeared on a late-night local show. As one of the many aspiring pop stars, Sally appeared on television for just a few seconds out of a 30-minute broadcast. Initially, I thought that was to be expected, and being on TV at all was fortunate, but it turns out, in those few seconds, Sally was splashed with mud water as part of the act by a comedian. Well, becoming a top star will take more time, I guess. And someone as cute as Sally is dime a dozen in the entertainment world, so standing out here doesn't mean she can get ahead without any real star or effort. Indeed, it seems just being cute won't cut it in the harsh world of show business. But that world is none of my business. When did that family return, and where are they living now? Sally seems to have started her entertainment career, but I wonder how my father's job is doing. Is my mother actively promoting Sally and working hard as her manager? No one knows about this family. Certainly not me, and not my grandmother or uncle either. My parents, having completely severed ties with us, chose their path. 3 years have passed since my parents abandoned me, a total of 13 years. I've grown accustomed to wearing a white coat, busier than ever with consultations and surgeries. One lunch break, as I was prepping for a major surgery in the afternoon, reviewing patient charts in the surgical procedure in the director's office, and trying to focus by closing my eyes and calming my mind, the phone suddenly rang. Surprised, I answered the call, which came from the reception desk on the first floor. My parents? The call was about a man and a woman claiming to be my parents, asking to see me. The reception staff, suspicious, had contacted me to confirm the names the couple had given. Indeed, the names matched those of my parents. Furthermore, the address of the family home where the four of us once lived, and my personal information they provided, were all correct. But why come to see me now? My heartbeat quickened, and my hand holding the receiver trembled. Should I meet them or refuse? I could hear the voices of the man and woman on the other end, pleading to see me. All right. Please send them to the director's office. Considering the confusion it might cause the staff and other patients, I agreed to meet the man and woman claiming to be my parents, just this once. My hand still trembled as I hung up, my heartbeat racing even more. Then, there was a knock on the door. Please come in. Though I tried to maintain composure, my nervousness was palpable. Without being ready, the door opened. This was a reunion with the parents I thought I'd never see again. We all froze, taking each other in. Julie? Is that you, Julie? We heard you were working at this hospital, but to think you'd be in such a room. You've become so respectable. Just like our daughter should be. Your father and I are so proud. The first words from my father were unexpectedly gentle. Nothing like the harsh words and shouting I remembered. They were dressed in what seemed to be high-end brands, but everything looked worn, yellowed, and outdated, with unkempt hair and my father's face covered in a patchy beard, suggesting they might be struggling. Julie, darling, you're going to be the director of this hospital in the future, aren't you? That's incredible. All your studying paid off. And look at you. My mother said, reaching out to touch my cheek. You've become so beautiful. As she touched my cheek, she suddenly broke down crying. Truth is, since separating from my parents, my grandmother introduced me to a renowned dermatologist. Together, we underwent various treatments, and I also conducted my own research on skincare, significantly altering my lifestyle. As a result, my severe atopic dermatitis dramatically disappeared, to the amazement of my doctor. One reason for my skin condition seems to have been the environment in which I grew up. Moving out of the musty room where I had secluded myself and living with my grandmother, my symptoms gradually improved. Now, I've regained healthy skin, leaving no trace of the past. I was terrible at saying such harsh things back then. Julie, you become so beautiful, even more so than Sally now. My father seemed at a loss for words. We were both shocked at how much the other had changed. However, I didn't set aside time for this. What do you want? I have an important surgery coming up. Can you make it quick? Then, my parents looked at each other and suddenly knelt on the floor. We're sorry to ask, but could we borrow some money? My father asked, bowing deeply. What do you mean? I was surprised and a bit shaken by my father's words. He began to explain slowly. 13 years ago, after abandoning me, my father initially worked hard at the new branch overseas, but his incurable spendthrift ways took over, and he began going out drinking every night, taking advantage of the low local prices. Showing up to work hungover, he failed to build good relationships with the local employees, causing frequent disputes and, despite several warnings from the company, failed to improve, leading to even more drinking to relieve stress. He was trapped in a vicious cycle. Moreover, driving hungover, he almost caused a major accident due to a mistake in handling the wheel. And having incited the ire of the company's top executives, he was expelled, and the family was forced to return to the States. My mother, too, got carried away by being treated as wealthy locals, indulging in branded suits and lavish lifestyles with Sally, only to find their savings nearly depleted. Returning home to find the house already sold, they reluctantly moved into a cramped, run-down apartment. Knowing my parents' propensity for wasting money and foreseeing their eventual downfall, my grandmother had offered to take me in when my father was transferred overseas. Despite attempts to find new employment in a new land, my father struggled with relationships at work, endured humiliation with a salary half of what he used to make. And Sally, though she joined an agency for dance training, often neglected her practices, falling behind her peers and feeling humiliated. Pampered for her beauty by my parents, Sally's appearance didn't stand out among her peers, and stress from the rigorous training led to binge eating, noticeable skin problems, and changes in her physique, earning warnings from the agency. With neither job on track and high expectations for Sally leading nowhere, the family's expenses, fueled by lessons, alcohol, and nightlife, spiraled into debt. Hearing rumors of me working as a doctor in a general hospital, they sought help.
Please, any amount will do. Help us. You must have plenty of money, working in such a prestigious hospital. We're at our wits' end, physically and mentally exhausted.
My father pleaded.
Yes, Julie, let's live together again as a family of 4, just like old times. Let's support each other.
My mother peered into my face, gauging my reaction. Don't joke with me. I couldn't contain my emotions any longer. Seeing the two people who never even called me by my name suddenly trying to cozy up to me as if flipping a switch, my anger was about to boil over into an explosion of emotion. But this is the director's office. Despite telling myself to stay calm, I couldn't hold back any longer.
After being called a monster and never treated like a parent should, they now wanted to live happily as a family and support each other? They just wanted money to clean up their debts.
For the first time, I let my feelings show in front of my parents. I was no longer the person I used to be. I no longer had to endure.
Easy for you to say I have plenty of money. This is the result of my efforts and the support of my grandmother, even through the toughest times. I owe you nothing.
My grandmother had always supported me.
You abandoned me 13 years ago. That was the end for us. Don't show up now, pretending to be my parents. You're nothing to me. Please leave.
My father looked down, silent. What is he thinking?
I have surgery soon. Please leave.
I said, trying to keep my voice professional as I moved to open the door, when suddenly, my father began to tremble and laugh oddly.
Julie. You've become so important, huh? Well, you must have the guts if you're planning to take over this hospital. But don't get it twisted. Sure, my brother has no children, but the idea of you becoming the next manager is ludicrous. I'm the second son. This hospital will be mine.
My father's tone shifted from meek to aggressive.
Yeah, right. You can act all high and mighty now. Just a hired doctor shouldn't be in the director's office. When Dad becomes the manager, you'll be kicked out of this hospital so fast.
Both my mom and dad started berating me as if fighting back.
Even if you've improved your looks, your heart, taking such an attitude towards the parents who took care of you, remains as ugly as ever. You'll regret those words.
My dad said in a low voice, glaring at me. Indeed, my uncle has no children. So, he apparently wants to say that he, being the only brother, is next in line to inherit. But thinking he could be the director without any knowledge of hospital management? I'm sick of their shallow thinking.
Unfortunately, what I said earlier is true. You and I are no longer family. We are strangers. My uncle, the current hospital administrator, is my father. We formalized an adoption.
My uncle thought about the future and decided to proceed with the adoption. Shocked by this fact, my parents quickly turned red and yelled, "We didn't hear about this. How dare you do such a thing without our consent?" However, the abandonment, verbal abuse, refusal to pay child support, and moving overseas, harming the child's welfare, made parental consent unnecessary for the adoption. Frustrated at not being able to extort money as they wished, my dad, unable to find an outlet for his anger, kicked the table hard. "What are you doing? Stop that." Suddenly, a voice interrupted, and we turned to see my grandmother standing at the entrance of the director's office.
I thought I heard some vulgar yelling. Was it you? What on earth are you doing here now?
My grandmother had come to the hospital with something for me.
Mom, it's not like that. This is, well...
Surprised by my grandmother's unexpected arrival, my dad's violent demeanor changed, and he started pleading with her as if she were his last hope.
Mom, Julie did an adoption with my brother without telling me. I'm her father. She did it without my permission. Don't you think that's terrible? Please, tell her off for me.
Apparently, my dad thought he could sway my grandmother to his side, win her sympathy, and take over the hospital from my uncle and me. But my grandmother's single comment shattered that pathetic plan.
Why should I need your permission? You two are the ones who abandoned Julie. For Julie's happiness, to start a new life cutting ties with you, I pushed for the adoption. My parents were stunned into silence.
You're Julie's father? After all the times you've mistreated this child, don't start with your nonsense. If you need money, sort it out yourself. I don't have any money to lend to someone as irresponsible with money as you are,
she said as she started to leave the room, with my father clinging to her persistently.
Please, Mom. If I can't pay off the debt, our family will be ruined. It might even affect Sally's agency.
What a pitiful sight.
I've used all my savings to move into an assisted living facility for the elderly. I've already finalized the arrangements. So, I don't have a penny left for you.
Then, the silence was broken by the ring of the phone. It seems the preparations for the surgery were complete. I received the report and headed to the operating room.
The moment you two abandoned me and left overseas 13 years ago, our familial bonds were severed.
Don't follow me anymore. Please leave immediately. With that, my parents left the room, shoulders slumped, and I headed to the operating room. Watching them leave through the window of the director's office, my grandmother mentioned they walked away dejectedly, looking back several times. Did they think we would have a change of heart and chase after them? Or was it regret for not being able to take over the hospital? Later, my grandmother told me my father's debts had spiraled, leading to financial ruin for the family. Despite the relentless debt collection, extending to my father's company and my sister's agency, my father became uncomfortable at work, resigned, and Sally eventually quit the entertainment industry without ever making a mark. My mother, begrudgingly taking up part-time work, still clung to her high society delusions, alienating those around her, likely making this employment short-lived. Sally, kicked out of the agency, now works at a cafe, still struggling with laziness and low income, hardly contributing to the family's finances. Once, my sister Sally came to my workplace begging for money. Of course, I refused and sent her away, but it seemed the shock of seeing me, whom she had always mocked, become more beautiful than herself was greater than being refused. Sally left the hospital completely disheartened. It might sound presumptuous to say, but I was once featured on a TV program as the beautiful doctor shaping the future of the General Hospital, becoming somewhat of a celebrity overnight. For Sally, who had been aspiring to be a celebrity, seeing a regular person like me in the spotlight must have been quite humiliating. As Sally changed due to stress, my parents began to hurl terrible words at her, and in retaliation, as if fighting back, Sally lashed out at them for the resentment of being ousted from the agency. They continued to blame each other for their impoverished life, leading to endless arguments. My grandmother has completely entrusted the hospital management to my uncle and me, and now she's living a carefree life in an assisted living facility. She has a pool and gym on site, and she always tells me how much she looks forward to her daily exercises when I visit her on weekends. My relationship with my grandmother remains as strong as ever. Under my uncle's strict yet loving guidance, I continue to strive as a doctor and a manager, working hard for the advancement of medical care. I will never forget the gratitude I owe to my grandmother and uncle, who saved me 13 years ago. I will always cherish it, forever.